Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Well, hello, my friends. Welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show. Today is Monday. It is September the 22nd, and looks like we had a little difficulty getting our YouTube channel to start running, but it is running now, so thanks for all of you who are joining me. And we're going to talk today about something that I just can't shake. I can't get over it. I can't move on from it. Somebody referred to me as a libertarian this morning, as a well-known commentator on the political right. I'm not a libertarian. I'm a conservative guy, and I don't understand why we keep making excuses for people that are not conservative and why we keep acting like things that are not true are true. So we're going to talk about the Uni-Party. I see more and more people waking up to the fact that they're basically the same group. I've got a really good little political meme that was put together. You think that it's the left side and the right side of an airplane wing, and they just show no, they're both on the same darn side. It continues to be, and you can do this by real simple metrics. You can go look at how much money our government spends. It also is relatively shocking if you evaluate things in terms of numbers, dollars, and the debt that we are putting on our children. There was a memorial service over the weekend, and one of the things that was most poignant that I took away was RFK Jr.'s speech, where he talked about there are things that are worse than dying, and it's living in slavery. And what is it to be in debt to someone but a form of slavery? And what would it be to pass on a national debt that is so absurdly big that you can no longer keep track of it? Do you know that before 9/11, our national debt was less than $6 trillion? We should say that one more time. It was $5.8 trillion of national debt for the entirety of the founding of America, moved up to September 11th of 2001. And now we're at like $37 trillion, of which Republicans are responsible for about $25 trillion of that. Republican speakers of the House have brought forward enough budgets that we have now done, almost 5x the entire history of America in the last 21 years. I mean, that's not drunken sailor spending. That's spending like you have terminal cancer and they gave you a couple of weeks to live. They just, like, these numbers they're meaningless. So how is that even possible? It's possible because the people that are running our country don't actually hold any principles, it looks like. And it seems pretty obvious to me. And of course, my favorite punching bag right now is Speaker Mike Johnson. Mike Johnson, who famously promised that he would step in for Kevin McCarthy. He was going to be a Republican Speaker of the House that was going to do one thing and one thing only. He promised to end continuing resolutions. He promised to end this kick it down the can and actually do the job of the Congress, which is to pass single issue appropriation bills. Each individual government agency should be spent with a very clear, transparent dollar amount, and we should be able to see what they were. And they were going to get a yes or a no vote from the folks inside our Congress. And that's never happened. It's never happened under him. It's pretty amazing. And by amazing, I mean it's a black pill moment. It's for those of us that look out there and say there is absolutely no way to fix this system, and it just has to eventually crash on its own. A lot of folks thought that Donald Trump was going to be the solution to this. It's pretty clear that that's not the case. If anything, he was a speed bump in some of the government tyranny. He's done his own versions of it. I don't think it's anywhere near as ridiculous as the people on the political left will say. And that's why moderate, let's call them reasonable voices on the right, are the ones that have to be able to do real commentary. We have to be able to push and say, look, this is good, this is bad, these are balls, these are strikes. Why would that be? Because if you have a fixed set of principles that you operate under, then you actually have a fixed strike zone. We can call balls and strikes if we know what they look like before the pitch is thrown. Otherwise, if you're just rooting for a team, then you're going to find yourself just cheering on whatever comes your way because he's our guy. It's not a good way to operate. It certainly isn't a good way of having a country that's principled. We find out that more and more people in America are not principled. It's tough. It's tough to evaluate. It's tough to see that. And it's also very frustrating for me because I want my kids to not live in debt slavery. I don't want our country not to fall apart. And I'd like our country to be better for the next generation, which has kind of been the hope of Americans for a very long time. And it doesn't seem like that's what we're going to be offering them. We're going to be offering them hard times and difficulties and inheriting the problems from the last 100 years. I don't know when it stops. I don't know if it does. So that's a really solemn way to start off our Monday morning. Let's talk about something that's a little bit more encouraging. There are still some decent companies out there that actually do believe in the values that those of us who are patriotic, that signed up for the right reasons to serve this country in various different ways, whether it was in the military or in law enforcement, or whether you were a first responder, or whether you're just a parent who's raising good citizens. Yeah, Patriot Coolers gets it. They make a good product. It's a fair transaction. They're continually updating and redesigning and increasing the capabilities of the stuff you guys can buy from them. This is their coolers. You guys are seeing some animations of some of their coolers. I have a large one, the 50 quart, sitting in my minivan, and we use it almost every single day. We definitely use it multiple times a week. It's constantly transporting groceries and things like that. So if you guys are wondering, hey, why on earth would I need a new cooler? I don't even go camping. You'll find out that there's a lot of reasons you might want one. Go to patriotcoolers.com. patriotcoolers.com. Use the promo code KYLE. They are the longest sponsor of the Kyle Seraphin Show. We're really grateful that they're out there. If you guys want something custom etched or custom engraved, or they will be happy to make your messaging happen on your stuff. You can see there's always going to be one of them behind me with an upside down American flag. It's on purpose, by the way. The American flag, our nation is under duress. And if you guys want to support what it ought to be, go help them. They also give money to veterans causes, which is pretty great. They're a good company. We like them. And I don't think you'll ever be sad about it. Every time you guys get them, you end up posting stuff on social media. And I'm like, maybe I need another one with another color. All right, we're going to get into today's program right now. We're going to be talking about the Uni-Party. We're going to talk about the Charlie Kirk Memorial. We'll talk about Trump's most authoritarian week yet. I don't know what the heck that's all about. And then I'm going to show you what happens when the DOJ is not de-weaponized. Let's get into it here. Let's start off with the first story. You can't help but acknowledge that Charlie Kirk's memorial service drew enormous crowds, and lots of people went to Arizona. I had a couple of people reach out to me that are sort of well-known names on the right, and they said, "Hey, are you going to be there?" And I went like, "No, why would I be there? I despise crowds. I want nothing to do with it. I understand that the idea that there are crowds does tell us something about the public support for the man, and I think that's great for the family. But you will not catch me in a crowd like this on purpose. My friend Joe Altman went, and so if you guys have not seen, he had a reflection. He was angry while he was sitting there, and not angry at Charlie Kirk, and not angry at the people that showed up to pay their respects to his wife, but he was angry that we have to be at this place in America. It was like a combination of a state funeral and a political rally, and some of it was a little bit difficult to watch for me, so I kind of came in and out a couple different times. There were better and worse speakers, as you guys can imagine, and a lot of it did seem like it was kind of doing a MAGA thing. I guess that's what Turning Point USA does, but something about a new widow of a young man with young kids coming out on a stage with fireworks and pyrotechnic displays, it rubbed me wrong. So forgive me that I'm not going to cover a ton of it. I do think there were a couple things that were important that were said, but again, a lot of it, it makes me wonder if that's what Charlie Kirk would have wanted for himself. The sad thing is that if you're 31 years old, the odds are you're not thinking about your own funeral. You're not thinking about your death. I think that takes time before you actually start making that reflection. But is that the thing that we're called to do? Is it to have these big like pyrotechnic displays and a bunch of people giving rah-rah speeches? We saw maybe some of the, like I said, some of the better and some of the worst things that could be out there. At the end of the day, Erica Kirk went out and forgave the man. It sounds like she's also on the same understanding that the person that they have arrested was in fact the shooting subject. So there's some question about that. That's something we're going to cover as well, because the FBI director has decided to do what influencers do, which is get clicks. But it does sound like she said, I think, the right thing, the Christian thing. Those of us that have examples and have seen this for a long time, people like John Paul II, you forgive the people that try to kill you. You do good to those that hate you. It's really got to be one of the toughest things. And whether it was written by her and her own ideas, or whether it was something that a speechwriter team came up with, still getting up and putting those words out of your own mouth after losing your husband, it's admirable. I don't know that all of us have that. I also think that the Holy Spirit tends to give people strength in moments that would otherwise be unbearable and impossible to stand with. So CBS News did a little coverage of it. They said a couple things. They said that the stadium had more than 63,000 people inside of it. They were, north of 100,000 people on the various different places. They were all packed in there. I watched a bit of Donald Trump talking about crowd size. He was super interested in that. I felt like that was a little bit off-putting. It wasn't really my thing, but they brought a lot of people from the political space to come and give speeches. And a lot of folks from the Trump administration went out there. Fox News covered it. This is the White House spokesperson giving her take on who he was as a man and what they were going to drag out that way to celebrate that person. Like, again, combination political rally and state funeral type thing, even though it wasn't officially sanctioned by the state.
Charlie was an amazing man. He was not only an influential political commentator, but he was a man of great faith, of deep faith. And, before I take the podium, I always pray to our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. I will continue to do that. And I will continue to think about Charlie and how he so boldly spoke the truth and courageously spoke about his faith. And I know so many, the president, the vice president, the Speaker of the House. We have cabinet secretaries who will be speaking at his memorial service tomorrow in Arizona. We're actually taking 2 planes full of White House staff. That just speaks to how many people he touched at the highest levels of our government, and he will surely be honored and remembered tomorrow.
So they brought a bunch of people out that, like I said, better and worse from the Trump administration sort of showings. Marco Rubio had a nice speech about Christianity. There was a lot of discussion of Christianity very openly and outwardly. I've seen these videos where people accused Charlie Kirk of being a Christian nationalist, and he said, I am a Christian and I am a nationalist. There are reasons that both of them, they're not in conflict with each other, and I tend to agree with that. There's biblical principles along with it. But it was overtly political in a lot of ways. And I guess the man lived in politics, so that makes some sense. But the question I continue to have is, why do so many people who didn't know this man, a young man, why do they feel so directly and personally impacted by his assassination? Donald Trump summed it up this way. He said, quote, Charlie's murder was not just an attack on one man or one movement. It was an attack on our entire nation. The gun was pointed at him, but the bullet was aimed at all of us. He was killed for expressing the very ideas that virtually everyone in this room, in this arena, and most other places in our country deeply believed in. The assassin failed because Charlie's message has been not silenced, but it's bigger and better and stronger than ever before. That was one of the better pieces of Trump's statement, and it was covered by CBS, of all places. That's not the way they always tend to cover this. You also had things that were written by Newsweek. They said this was Trump's most authoritarian week yet. I don't know how in the world they came up with that. They said that they're using the assassination as an excuse to ramp up the ongoing campaign for total political power. Of course, Rolling Stone has to do their version of it. So that's why I think they immediately get themselves kicked out of the discussion. I think a lot of people turned around and did something that I don't understand either, which is that they made somebody else's passing about themselves. I saw this on CNN. I saw this on some other networks as well. It wasn't just on the left, but this is CNN discussing things with Ilhan Omar. She took an opportunity to go and talk about how gross a human being she is. A little bit about her that we'll talk about in a second. Some of you guys have tagged me on videos that I also saw discussing her family's move to the United States. They also had some confirmation last week that she does look like she did indeed marry her brother, which would be immigration fraud, but it's not entirely obvious to me that would result in her deportation or that she could be denaturalized as a citizen. There's a lot of questions about why these people who come to this country and hate it, and they really do, they really hate the things that we're about. They're more than happy to take advantage of it and then try to shoehorn their terrible ideology into what we do here. She made a point of not backing down. And so we're having this discussion now at this time, the difference between liberals and leftists, once again, the discussion between sort of good faith actors on the left who disagree with us on principle, and then the people who they can't operate in good faith because everything about them is progressive. I've seen this term used as well for leftists, progressive leftism. It's something I talked about over a year ago with the folks at Catholic Vote and Edify. It's its own religion. It takes the place of any other religion. So I also wanted to kind of talk about that a little bit. Let's start with Ilhan Omar not backing down. She's going to hold on to her criticisms and say what things were really gross. Again, so many people that I saw on the left turned around and made this experience about themselves. And Omar's a good example, and Jimmy Kimmel and all the people on the political left that decided to say, hey, I also have a part in this tragedy, and it affects me. They went out there and did the meme where they pointed to the mirror and they said, get out there and make this about you. Here she is making it about her, I think.
I just think it was the video where it called him Dr. Frankenstein and said his monster shot him through the neck. I mean, obviously this is a person, and looking at this is someone who was a husband and a father, and in the days after his shocking death, that happened as a result of his views, or it happened as a result as he was sharing his views publicly with people, that people found it jarring to hear such criticism of that in the immediate aftermath of
what
death.
I find jarring is that there are so many people willing to excuse the most reprehensible things that he said, that they agree with that they're willing to have monuments for him, that they want to create a day to honor him, and that they want to produce resolutions in the House of Congress honoring his life and legacy. It is one thing to care about his life, because obviously so many people loved him, including his children and wife. But I am not going to sit here and be judged for not wanting to honor any legacy this man has left behind. That should be in the dustbin of history, and we should hopefully move on and forget the hate that he spewed every single day.
It's a pretty aggressive take. It's a pretty nasty take from someone that I think is a bad faith actor in the United States. I saw this video over the weekend. Some of you guys may not realize this. A lot has been made of her being an immigrant, and she comes into this country and she's been able to become a member of Congress. And that's pretty impressive for our country, not for her per se. But I think it says a lot about this nation and the way that we operate in this nation and the openness that we have in the United States. You don't hear her talk a lot about, or at least I don't, about her gratefulness for this country. This little clip adds some context. I went and did a couple little searches so that I could substantiate. It does seem to be this is the mostly true, I would say, in the way that it's characterized, that Ilhan Omar's family came to the United States as refugees, and that's a technical term. But in many ways, we could look at them as being political exiles. They were exiled from Somalia because the regime that her family was a part of, that her father worked under, which was a Marxist regime, as far as I can understand it, was overthrown. And so they were no longer safe to stay in that country. And it's not quite the same thing. This guy makes the argument that they were basically running from justice. I don't know that there was a lot of justice in 1991 to 1995 Somalia. I think it's been a failed state for quite a while. But this concept of why she got here and why she might continue to be the way that she is, and why we think she's so vile. It kind of makes more sense when you have this context, I suppose.
Let's take Ilhan Omar as an example, okay? She comes from a family, and they call her a refugee who came from Somalia, right? They call her a refugee. Her family were the governing party, the Marxist Islamist government in Somalia, who were overthrown and then fled. Now, technically that makes her a refugee, but she wasn't fleeing oppression, or rather her family weren't fleeing oppression, they were fleeing justice. They were fleeing their own people, holding them to account for the dictatorship that they had established. So you have people like the Omar family, and what do? Do they come to America and see America and go, okay, this is pretty cool. They're not oppressing each other. Let's be part of this. No, they go, hey, how can we oppress them? How can we bring Marxism to America? That's the thought process. And it may be a passive thought process, but it's the thought process.
It kind of gives you at least a little bit of a shade, and I want to talk about the backstory on it. So Ilhan Omar's father's name was Nu Omar Mohammed, and he was a colonel in the Somali army under the regime of Saeed Barre. I think that's how it's said. Mother died when she was 2 years old, so didn't serve in the government. But he was a senior official as a colonel, and was part of the Somali National Army. Led a regiment during the Ogaden War in the late 1970s. And then after that conflict, they claimed that he worked as a teacher trainer. You saw that in the video as well, if you could see the tiny print. Family fled Somalia to escape the civil war, which was intensified after the overthrow in 1991 from the ruling party that they were obviously, or he was eventually a part of. So that's an interesting situation to find yourself in. And again, we used to call that sort of thing political exile. What's amazing is the United States doesn't do that. We don't exile people when we have a government change. There's an argument to be made that that's why we are as dysfunctional as we are. That's the argument that the deep state, that the administrative state that exists in this country is actually problematic. It's because we don't remove people from service when they serve one thing versus another thing. And it also goes to the discussion about bad-faced actors. So I wanted to play a little bit about leftism and liberalism. This is something that I had never quite considered. I'm going to add a little reflection on top of this. I saw this video this morning and immediately I was like, I need to tell my wife about this. I've made the comparison that I think people on the political left that are hard leftists, progressive leftists or whatever, operate kind of like more like teenagers and toddlers. And I think this makes the point. But what I did not consider is what the specific mindset is. So you listen to this and we'll have a quick commentary on this as well. And then you see if it resonates with you.
How does someone who is like of a certain level of maturity, age or not, level of intelligence and an informed person, how can they still be a leftist? Because to me, it's a denial of the reality of human nature.
I think that's true.
I can't believe that there are adults that hold these views, that have seen and been around and experienced humanity for a fair amount of time, that you could still be a leftist.
Well, certainly be the kind of deranged leftist. In other words, the problem, one of the key beliefs of the left is that people are inherently good. People are intrinsically good.
Yes.
And that it's corrupt social institutions that make them bad. And if we could just if we could eliminate all the flaws in societal institutions, then the natural goodness of people would emerge. I mean, that is like the view of a 12-year-old who literally doesn't know anything about reality.
Isn't he right? I'd considered most of those points individually, that it's a sort of immature and sort of teenage attitude. This is why you see people that want to back Marxism, that want to back socialism. What I hadn't considered is the naive belief that it's the governmental systems, the societal systems that are the problem, and that human beings have innate goodness. What it does to actually live in that manner, to believe those things, is to essentially ignore original sin. And so original sin is both a Judeo concept and it's a Christian concept, and it's something that we sort of understand. That's the reason why we have to have laws, is that people will, in fact, given their baser instincts, will tend towards something. And so you have to encourage things. And so what do leftists do if they have the belief that there is no such thing as original sin, that there is no such thing as a problem within the human condition, that it's actually a governmental or it's a societal construct? They try to improve governmental and societal constructs to make those things perfect, because then they would be able to release the innate good of human beings with no evidence that that's real. They actually deny the one thing that our founding fathers understood. I told you that I did a capstone class, or it was an honors political science class when I was in college. It's one of the really sort of neat things that I took away from my 5 years of being in college, which wasn't the greatest investment of my time. And we did an evaluation of the American experience and the American experiment in terms of utopias. And the way that utopias were always set out, and there's 3 different basically historical ways that you can create a utopia, which are not real, right? These are hypothetical thought experiments. One of the utopias is to have an infinite land with an infinite amount of resources. And so nobody would ever want for anything, and therefore they have all the things they need, and they will be left to their inherent goodness. The other way is to have perfect human beings, which obviously don't exist either. And perfected human beings would also be able to live in perfect harmony with the world. They would have, sort of a symbiotic relationship with those things around them. And then the last form of utopia was that you would have a perfect governmental system that would contradict and counteract all of the negativity that human beings may have. So perfect place, perfect system, or perfect people. That's the only way that you could have these. So utopias are not physically possible. So what did our founding fathers create in the American experiment? They created a thing that said we have many resources, but not perfect resources. We have good people, but not perfect people. And we were going to have the best possible system to compensate for a lack of perfect resources and perfect people. We're going to try to do a thing where we do the best of all 3 things. But a big chunk of that is that you must become, as best you can, a good person. You can't turn around like a Marxist, like a leftist, and say that the problem exists within the governmental structure and societal constructs and ignore that there is this thing called original sin or this instinct of human beings to fall into our baser nature. And that's what it seems like leftists do. I'd never considered that before, and it might be the single biggest argument for a Christian nationalist position. Leftism ignores the reality that all human beings who are over the age of, I don't know, like 15 or 16 can start really accepting that people make bad decisions and they do it because they want to, because that's how, given certain things like, you know, all the deadly sins, you know, greed, lust, coveting that which is not yours, all those things, they have to be overcome as well. And that's what our governmental system is trying to sort of mitigate. To act like the governmental system in the first place was the problem, that our societal constructs like capitalism and so on, markets, that those are the problem. It's a really missed opportunity. And again, it's a really juvenile argument. Here's Charlie Kirk talking about leftism and liberalism. I think we can revisit that and find that people that do want to be liberal should have the same principles as us, a lot of them. And we can have certain sort of arguments on how to solve the problem. I think this was the discussion that we were having last year as well. How do you negotiate with people that don't accept the construct? If we agree on certain goods, if we agree on certain good outcomes, and then we just disagree on how we get to them, that's something you can have in good faith. Charlie Kirk has had that discussion at some of his events. This is a recording of one of those discussions. And then there's the people who simply want to impose their own ideology because they don't even accept the original premise. We can't really work with them. And I don't think we will.
So there's a difference between liberals and leftists, okay? It's a very big difference. A liberal is someone I will disagree with, and we'll have a wonderful time. We'll go out to dinner, and we'll consider each other friends. A liberal is someone that might believe in gay marriage. They might believe in more accessible abortion. They might believe in higher taxes, and they might believe in, you know, maybe more social welfare programs. That's a liberal. A liberal will agree to disagree. A liberal will have the conversation and they'll say, we might not agree on this, but I still treat you with respect, and I really like you as a person. A leftist will try to shut you up before you even open your mouth. A leftist does not believe in capitalism whatsoever. A leftist is rooted in intolerance. And you see this happen all over the place in America, where college campuses I get shouted down. You heard my message tonight. Do you think I'm a hateful speaker? Do you think I bring vitriol? I get labeled by groups on the left in America that I should not be allowed to speak on U.S. campuses. That I'm somehow spreading vitriol and hatred, and I'm spreading dangerous ideas. There's a difference between a liberal and a leftist.
I don't think he's wrong there. There is a difference. It's worth acknowledging. The question is where is that line and how hard is it to find? And sometimes it's more hard than not. And a lot of times you see people kind of dance back and forth between those and they play both sides. And I think CNN is guilty of doing that on a regular basis. That's why they platform people like Ilhan Omar. I do want to hear what she has to say so that I can push back against it verbally. So I can say that this is awful. I'd like to. Then you get this sort of this revisionist history. One of the things that trended at the end of last week that started pushing out into the space was this instinct to make it all about me. And the right is just as guilty as the left was. So this is why I had a hard time sitting and watching the entirety of the memorial service. We saw people say, the last thing Charlie Kirk said to me was blank. And it just turns out that blank was exactly what I want to do. Right? Kristi Noem. The last thing he said to me was we need to get these liberal governors in order and we need to go out and stop sanctuary cities. Stephen Miller had a story about it, right? Everybody came out and said the last thing he said to me was blank. And it was exactly my thing. It was my personal bugaboo. If Charlie Kirk and I had been friends, apparently the last thing Charlie Kirk would have said to me is we need to de-weaponize the FBI and the DOJ because that's the things he apparently shared. Interestingly, the people on the political left also got into this. And so you have Anderson Cooper and Van Jones, again, never take an opportunity to not make it about me. There's a very narcissistic position that can be held. And I think a lot of these folks that are out there in public, they can't help but see that it's about themselves. Here's another example of that. This was one of the reasons why I just thought, yeah, I found it to be kind of gross. And I was not unique in the Suspendables crew. Our behind the scenes discussion about this was all everyone kind of had this feeling like it's a little bit gross, and it makes me wonder, would this man have condoned the way that his death has been treated? based on the way that he lived his life. I'm not 100% confident it would have been. This is a celebration of a DM. This is the self-complimentary moment where it's like, I didn't agree with Charlie Kirk, but he thought enough of me that he would have had that discussion with me. Well, it's a little too late for that. Van Jones, again, making it about himself, I think.
The story begins when a Ukrainian woman was fatally stabbed last month in North Carolina. The suspect is a black man, and Charlie Kirk and Van got into a public sparring match online. Kirk claimed the murder happened because she was white. Van denounced that as completely unfounded. Kirk then sent out what Van calls a fire hose of tweets challenging his argument, which Van says sparked death threats against him. In the midst of all of this, Kirk reached out to Van in a direct message on X. Hey Van, I mean it. I'd love to have you on my show to have a respectful conversation about crime and race. I would be a gentleman, as I know you would be as well. We can disagree about the issues agreeably. Now, that message was sent on September 9th. Van says he did not see it until the very next day after Kirk was murdered. Van Jones just wrote a piece about this for CNN.com and is here tonight. I mean, this is extraordinary. So this was received the day before he was killed.
Yeah. Look, I mean, we were beefing. I don't know. We were going at it online, on air. And then after he died, after he was murdered, my team called and said, Van, he was trying to reach you, man. What? And what was he doing? Dialogue. Let's be gentlemen together. He says, let's disagree agreeably. So I'm sitting on this and I'm watching the whole country talk about civil war, censorship, justifying murder about this guy. This guy is reaching out to his mortal enemy saying we need to be gentlemen, sit down together and disagree agreeably. And the next day he's killed. And I've sat on it long enough, and I just said, you know what? We're going to Memorial Weekend for this man. We disagree. Everybody knows we were not friends, okay, at all. But you praise the good when it's time to memorialize somebody. And what he did, and I didn't even know it, was good. He was not for censorship. He was not for civil war. He was not for violence. He was for dialogue, open debate and dialogue, even with me. Even with me.
All right. That is pretty nauseating, and I'm going to give you Larry Elder's response. He sent me a DM with his response to it, and I promoted this over on social media over the weekend, and I think it's actually worth hearing. So we're going to go to that in a second. Did you notice how he made it about himself? And they talked about censorship? Because what the left tried to do was conflate what happened to Charlie Kirk to what happened with Jimmy Kimmel. One man was a comedian making allegedly like making $20 million a year and had poor ratings. And so they decided to go out there and I think exercise some sort of hidden piece in the contract that said if you say something that brings discredit to the network, then we can get rid of you. They took advantage of a business opportunity. That's my guess. I think it's the most reasonable explanation. And so the left turned on and said, wow, Charlie wasn't about censorship. And that's true. But that's to fundamentally pervert, I think, the way that this experience went down. And Van Jones did the exact same thing. He made it about himself. I'm going to give you the Larry Elder thing. So if you guys are feeling nauseated by that, I will answer it in just 1 second. Before we do, let's talk about my friends over at Silent. This is one of the things that we do here is we try to be reasonable, and then you can listen and say, hey, you're reasonable about other things. What about gear? One of the things I do with my gear is that I test it regularly. And one of the things I want to test is I just forgot to put it in. So I'm going to put it in right now. The phone is in a Faraday bag. I do it, and I've tested these things extensively. I feel very good about recommending them because your phone is a tracking device, and there are government agencies and big tech, which we're going to talk about in a second, corporate data brokers, cyber criminals, take your piece. They are all looking to grab a piece of your digital footprint. They want to know who you are and where you are, what you're doing, and then they want to sell it or use it for God knows what. Silent exists because they make Faraday products that can block those things, and they can give you silence. That means it's going to turn off the signals coming in. Your RFID, your NFCs, your near-field communications, your cellular, your Wi-Fi, your Bluetooth, your GPS, all the things that keep track of you. They're going to shut down all the signals coming out of those devices that are spying on you all the time. If you have no tracking, there's no remote access, there's no breadcrumbs. It means that people can't find you, at least using that particular device. They got to do it the old-fashioned way, which is what I used to do, go drive around and look for people with binoculars. It's a lot harder. It's a lot more labor-intensive. Don't make it easy for people to track you, and don't give away whatever it is. Give yourself time when you can be with your family. You can simply be free and not have a digital footprint where you're going. All you got to do is drop your phone into a Faraday bag by Silent. They make outstanding ones. There are cheaper options out there, but I do not think that they work as well. Based on my testing, we tested probably a dozen of them that came off the Chinesium rolls of Amazon when I was working for the Bureau. If you want to go completely silent, check out slnt.com/KYLE, SLNT. That's silent with no vowels.com/Kyle. Silent.com/Kyle. You'll save 15% on qualified orders. You'll get free shipping on the stuff that they can, and you're going to get a fantastically solid, capable product. Look into them today. Yeah, if you guys haven't done it, their designs are really, really good, folks. And I 100% stand behind that backpack I use all the time now. All right, let me read you from Larry Elder's. I didn't put it on the screen because it's too small, but let me just quote him directly. Larry Elder says, quote, "Forgive me, Van Jones, for not being moved or impressed by your brave acknowledgement of Charlie's decency. Anyone with even a passing relationship with Charlie will tell you about his willingness to engage civilly with those with whom he disagrees. And so you deserve a cookie for stating the obvious. More to the point, you're the same Van Jones who, when CNN declared Trump the winner on election night in 2016, immediately attributed President-elect Trump's victory to white lash, spearheading the still widely believed BS narrative that Trump only won because of angry, racist white people who elected him. I'd be more impressed if and when you acknowledge and apologize for your major role as a CNN contributor in promoting the hideous and racist anti-white big lie that Trump was dog whistling to white supremacists and elected by white supremacist racist voters as a reaction, in your word, to, quote, against a changing country and in part against a black president. WTF. And when will you apologize for your big-time role in helping fostering one side hates the other division in America that has induced a disturbed man to buy into a narrative and to engage in assassination against Charlie Kirk? You're one of the primary reasons why the polls show nearly 85% of blacks consider Trump to be a racist. And so what is he talking about? He's talking about that one president who probably was responsible for more division in this country than anyone has been in my lifetime. By the way, Larry Elder said, if you want a Bronze Star for saying Charlie was a good guy, please pass me the barf bag. So for those of you that find this kind of stuff nauseating, you're probably going to need that barf bag. This is the former president of the United States talking about what he believed his role was as president. And it is equally, I think, self-praising. It sits into the same kind of spot as Van Jones held on to. And I don't think we can believe him simply because it came out of his mouth.
My view was that part of the role of the presidency is to constantly remind us of the ties that bind us together. And we live in a big, complicated, raucous, diverse nation. I've said before, I believe, it is what makes us exceptional. There's never been an experiment like this, where you have people from every corner of the globe show up in one place and say, based on these ideals, we hold these truths to be self-evident. All men are created equal. That based on that, and a constitution and a Bill of Rights and a democracy, that we can somehow figure out how to get along and maintain our private beliefs and pray to God in our own ways.
That was hard to get out, wasn't it?
Retain aspects of the cultures that we bring from wherever it is that we're coming from, and yet still decide that we are all Americans who can salute that flag and believe in a certain creed and defend this country and try to make it better for each successive generation.
Is that what Barack Obama actually did? Is that what his legacy was? That we all sort of agreed that there was this. How hard was it for him to say the word God? How hard was it for him to to try to act like there was some sort of unified vision of what America is supposed to be. I mean, did he grow up in America where you were supposed to bring your culture and then make us deal with your culture? No. Whatever happened to the melting pot idea? Today, and I consider to see it, I continue to see that the Democrat idea is that we are supposed to be a stew with blobs and chunks of non-homogenized pieces of other culture, and we're supposed to tolerate and accept however ridiculous or however antithetical they are to American values. They're supposed to be able to exist, and we're supposed to tolerate that, as opposed to saying, come in and join the dominant culture. Welcome to America. There's some things we believe in. We believe in a free market. We believe in capitalism. We believe in free speech. We believe in vigorous debate. We believe in discussing things and not taking to violence. And if you have something that doesn't fit into that, that can't stay. But if you want to bring your cuisine or your music, if you want to bring something and you want to preserve a tradition that doesn't violate our laws or our understanding of the way that human beings are supposed to interact, yeah, you can have that here too. You want to bring your food, you want to bring some zest or some spice to it? Sure. It gets mixed in, but it has to become part of the whole. It can't remain in a chunk. And interestingly enough, a lot of these Marxist ideas tend to do that. What they want to do is, you guys are in the chat are saying the word balkanize, right? Which comes from a Marxist experiment that happened. It actually worked together until it didn't in the former Yugoslavia. They want to maintain people's individual identity so you can pit one side against the other. And they also always accuse you of being a fascist. This was some of the stuff that was going on. This has been an ongoing discussion about Donald Trump. He's authoritarian. This has been his most authoritarian week. And they finally found something that they can hang it on, that he is using the so-called, the governmental apparatus to cancel a comedian. God forbid. But apparently they've seemed to have forgotten how much this actually already happened. We're living in a country that seems devoid of like 5 years of real recent history. So allow me to remind you that under Obama, but more accurately, maybe under his third term in Joe Biden, whoever the hell was running the country then, when that guy was, wandering around looking for his Roomba charger moment. Don't we remember that just recently, in the time that I have been a public figure, we got access to what they called the Twitter files that happened in late 2022, and suddenly realized that there was an official capacity of the federal government to come in and crush and censor individual citizens, in violation of that Bill of Rights that you just heard Barack Obama sit out there and try to extol. We have a Constitution and a Bill of Rights. We just ignore the hell out of it because it's totally inconvenient. Yeah, folks, why would you have a Bill of Rights? It turns out that the government is not supposed to be powerful enough to do any of the things that it did. Here's Zuckerberg talking on Rogan. This is the first time, we should remind ourselves of these things. And by the way, my former agency was integral in this. And when this stuff started is when my career ended, because that was the end for me. I already knew that there were problems and I'd brought them up internally. And it's like, hey, are we really doing this? Are we violating federal law and reverse targeting by using these intelligence investigations? And they would explain it. Well, you don't really understand what's going on. You're like, okay, maybe I don't. Maybe I don't. Maybe I've only been here a couple of years. I don't understand. It became blatantly obvious by the time we rolled from 2020 into 2021, and the federal government came and said, not only will you not have the right to speak, and not only are we going to censor people, not only are we going to lean down and cancel people, but also if you indicate you might support those ideas, if you think that you're allowed to have an alternative view than the government's, we're going to get rid of you. And we're going to use things like vaccine mandates and your religious beliefs as proxies for your political beliefs. When I use the word purge to Jim Jordan's office in October of 21, November of 2021, it became very clear that the word purge, I was using it as an ideological purge. They found, they being the FBI, but all of government was doing the same thing. And by the way, they were working across the entire workforce, if you guys recall. They used OSHA mandates first to go after private businesses. They used any number of HHS type policies and CDC requirements to do the same thing in other institutions like healthcare. So a lot of different private businesses, whether you were involved in transportation from DOT, whether you were involved in industrial process through OSHA, whether you were involved in the medical industry, there were a lot of industries that purged people, and they did so based on your likely beliefs. And they found an ideological proxy, which was whether or not you were allowing a government to come in and dictate what you did or did not do with your own body. And they immediately forgot the my body, my choice bit, didn't they? Because they don't need to have principles. It's on a case-by-case basis. Zuckerberg reminding us that people, the Biden administration, did this. And I consider the Biden administration to be synonymous with what Barack Obama was doing as well, because the same people who got hired under Obama continued to believe in the same things that Biden did.
They pushed us super hard to take down things that were honestly were true, right? I mean, they basically pushed us and said, you know, anything that says that vaccines might have side effects, you basically need to take down. And I was just like, well, we're not going to do that. Like, we're clearly not going to do that. I mean, that is kind of inarguably true.
Who is they? Who's telling you to take down things that
it was
that talk about vaccine side effects?
It was people in the Biden administration. I think these people from the Biden administration would call up our team and like scream at them and curse, and it's like,
you had governmental officials screaming at private businesses. Like I said, I knew people that were involved in meetings with Elvis Chan standing next to the CEO of Reddit or one of the senior executives at Reddit and saying, what? We can't tell you what to do. You're a private platform, but we certainly could remind you that you have a terms of service, and maybe this actually is a violation of terms of service. Do you want to go do something about it? The same people who got behind that and were 100% on board, they're the same people that are now crying out about, oh, what about censorship? What about free speech? What about the ability to not have to have fascist governmental involvement? Remember, fascism is the federal government, a larger centralized government coming in and pushing and dictating policies that will be favorable to them on private businesses, not owning the private businesses the way the Marxists want, but just leaning on them. And then the private businesses saying, well, it's in our best interest to go ahead and comply. I don't want the Trump administration to do that either, but I don't think they needed to. Isn't that funny? I don't need Donald Trump to step in and do anything when the left is actually melting themselves down and they're cutting down their own credibility. There's no reason to interrupt the enemy when they're making a mistake. And people like Jimmy Kimmel were enemies of regular people, which is why people didn't watch him. They watched him and they went like, nope, that's out of touch. I'm not interested. Here's Jimmy Kimmel talking about Donald Trump. He's talking about his celebrating the censorious nature of the political left because they can't have that dialogue. They can't be like liberals. This is what a leftist sounds like. Liberals, Charlie Kirk definition, something we all sort of agree on. They have the same principles, or at least they have similar principles, and then we negotiate on how we get to the answer to make things better for human beings. Leftists, their goal is always going to be the same. It's going to be to grab more power. It's to move forward with their ideologies. It's progressive. It can never stop. Even if it actually injures its own cause, they don't care. This is the argument that was being made about censoring Donald Trump.
Trump has been suspended from Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and even Snapchat. But don't worry, Mr. President, there are still plenty of apps you do have access to. You still have Spotify to drown out the sound of millions of people cheering as you leave. You still have Pet Finder since you're on the outs with Mike Pence. You have Cameo, which will soon be your primary source of income. You can still play Among Us, a game where everyone accuses each other of being against them. You'd love it. You could play Pokemon Go. You and Donnie Jr. can hunt Pikachus together. And when no one else wants you, don't forget, there's always your old friend, the Domino's Pizza Tracker. Not only did Trump get banned from Twitter, Google, Apple, and Amazon removed the Parler app from their platforms. Parler is where all the right-wingers gather to post QAnon nonsense and misspell the word parlor. And no one was more upset about Parler going away than a sneaky little congressman named Devin.
But it's more than just the financial aspect of that. Republicans have no way to communicate. I have 3 million followers on Parler. Tonight, I will no longer be able to communicate with those people.
I mean, other than being on Fox News right now. Why does Devin Nunes always look like somebody knocked his ice cream out of his hand? Trumpers are complaining bitterly that they're being silenced. In fact, they won't shut up about being silenced. On their 3 propaganda TV networks, on 1,000 conservative radio shows, all over the internet, they are screaming about being silenced. They won't be silent about being silenced.
That's interesting. And remember, the story with Jimmy Kimmel's canceling was what? That he made factually untrue statements. He claims that they don't do that. So here's a little clip that the Megyn Kelly show was able to dig up from January of 2024, saying that they had fact checkers that made sure that when he made a joke, by the way, isn't it interesting to listen to him standing there without the laugh track, without the live audience, and none of us feel like laughing about anything he said because it wasn't particularly funny? That's how you know the guy didn't probably have a very very long shelf life in that contract. To me, there was nothing in there that I was like, I didn't even smirk. It's not even clever. But his claim was that they weren't making factually untrue statements, that they actually backed it, that they were fact checkers. So let's hear what that sounded like.
And as far as the, well, you say things about people all the time argument goes, yes, I do. It's not the same. It's not even close to the same. We say a lot of things on this show. We don't make up lies. In fact, we have a team of people who work very hard to sift through facts and reputable sources before I make a joke. And that's an important distinction because the truth still matters. And when I do get something wrong, which happens on rare occasions, you know what I do? I apologize for it, which is what Aaron Rodgers should do, which is what a decent person would do.
Again, that was the same story about going in, and they were so offended by these things that they didn't really understand. Like, why do we need to go to a stand-up comedian doing a late-night television show to find out things about vaccines or to find out things about any news happening in the world? I don't need it. What's interesting is that this backlash is starting to hit, and there's people that are realizing, hey, maybe we went too far. Well, now I think it's too late in some way. So you're going to get this backlash that's going to actually happen. And it is going to be a backlash. It is going to be the result of your own actions. This is when you've waited too long because you're no longer in a position of power. Isn't it interesting that you want unity when you're the ones who are not in the position to actually create unity? We didn't see Barack Obama bring unity. We didn't see Joe Biden. He told us that our families were going to have winters of severe illness and death. I was still waiting for that. Right? It doesn't matter what you do when you're in the minority. It matters what you do when you're in the majority. And it turns out, I think that all these people do the same damn thing. So I guess what's good is good for the goose. It's good for the gander. It's not great for America. It's not great for our children. It's not great for people of principle. But this is what it looks like when the left realizes, hey, maybe we overdid this because we're not in charge right now. And we've run out our own position. And then we're going to talk Uni-Party here as we kind of get wrapped up.
I heard earlier this week, Ezra Klein and Ross Douthat having a conversation. And there was this moment where Ezra says, you know, I probably needed to acknowledge back a couple of years ago that we were a little too censorious, that the left was actually interested in kind of intimidating
something
people.
More liberals should say.
I think it would help.
They should acknowledge, not just in passing, but actively acknowledge where things went wrong. That's the only way to move forward.
Agreed.
I think, in a way.
But
because otherwise,
what would we acknowledge?
Well, I think you have to acknowledge that there is listen, cancel culture was a thing.
Absolutely.
Okay, it was actually a thing. And it's not just enough to say, well, my cancel culture was fine, but yours is wrong. There has to be an acknowledgement that yeah, now I think everybody understands what free speech really looks like and what it means. And then you have to apply that thinking to what was happening 4, 5, 6 years ago in this country and say something about it.
Okay. So what they're saying is now that we've done all the things that we wanted to do, and now that we're on the bottom of the pile and we're the ones that are going to be taking these hits, now we don't like it, and so we'd like you to stop. We acknowledge that we were bad before, so now go ahead and do the nice thing. Okay, maybe. I mean, that is the Christian perspective. It's hard to get behind it. I understand the instinct not to. Donald Trump put this out over the weekend on Truth Social. This is a really strange. First of all, everything about this is strange. It looks like it's a DM or a text message, and he did it as a public post. Now, I don't know what the hell's going on there. And by the way, I don't think you do either, but he was asked about it. So let me just read it because it's relevant to this idea that something needs to happen. And, Donald Trump is not one who is likely to forgive as much. In fact, he said as much at the memorial service. Here's what he said. He posted this on True Social. Pam, I reviewed over 30 statements and posts saying that essentially same old story as last time, all talk, no action, nothing is being done. What about Comey? What about Adam Schiff? What about Letitia? They're all guilty as hell, but nothing is going to be done. That is the instinct. The status quo always wins here. I think that's what I believe. He said, we almost put in a Democrat-supported U.S. attorney in Virginia with a really bad Republican past, a woke rhino who was never going to do his job. And that's why the two worst Democrat senators pushed him so hard. They even lied to the media and said that he quit and that we had no case. No, I fired him. And there's a great case, and many lawyers and legal pundits say so. Lindsey Halligan is a really good lawyer and likes you a lot. We cannot delay any longer. It's killing our reputation and credibility. They impeached me twice. They indicted me 5 times over nothing. Justice must be served. And now. So Trump making the argument. And then, by the way, he went on to do this one, which is even weirder. Then it looks like he was correcting his own statement. And he says, Pam Bondi's doing a great job as Attorney General of the United States. She's very careful and smart. And she loves our country. And we need a tough prosecutor in the Eastern District of Virginia. And that's why my recommendation is Lindsey Halligan. We got to get things moving. And we don't need a Democrat-endorsed Republican. I'll be nominating Lindsey Halligan. to the United States Attorney. It's a very important part of our great country. She'll be fair and smart and provide justice desperately needed. Justice for all. No, okay. I don't know what just happened there. I don't know what that was. Is that a retraction? Is that a correction? Very strange. But Trump let his instincts come out on stage. This is the thing that Democrats will seize on, that they will say, look, this is so bad. Our president is talking about, being vindictive. And yeah, it probably wasn't appropriate in that venue, even though people, I think, understand where it comes from. And this was why that whole memorial service to me was hard, because it was a mixture of political and not political, and saying, hey, look at me. I'm going to make this about me. Here's Trump's probably worst moment during this time. And again, I'm showing it because people on the left are going to talk about it. It's in the context more broadly of people acting like censorship didn't happen and that you didn't have 5, 6 years, 8 years of wild things. I mean, didn't Trump say it right there? They indicted me 5 times, impeached me twice, weaponized government, weaponized DOJ. It's a real thing. It's not being captured. I think he gets it. At least he understands that. Was this the most appropriate time to do it in the middle of a memorial service for someone who said turn the other cheek and love your enemies? I don't know that it was. I don't know that this is the kind of levity that I want, but here it is anyway. Again, you should know this is what the political left is going to seize on, so you should hear what he said if you didn't listen to the memorial.
His opponents, he wanted the best for them. That's where I disagreed with Charlie. I hate my opponent, and I don't want the best for them. I'm sorry. I am sorry, Erica. But now Erica can talk to me and the whole group, and maybe they can convince me that that's not right, but I can't stand my opponent. Charlie's angry. Looking down, he's angry at me now. He wasn't interested in demonizing anyone. He was interested in persuading everyone to the ideas and principles.
It's hard to hear that because that's not, I don't think I understand what he's saying and I understand why he would say it, but I think every time Trump gets in front of a microphone, he just does what Trump does and he forgets maybe the place, that there's certain times and places where it's more appropriate. And maybe these guys are all guilty of it too. If you guys are just listening, if you're not watching over on Spotify, or if you're not watching on YouTube or Rumble, you're missing out on these 3 buddies: Bill Clinton, George Bush, Barack Obama, all hanging out together, all buddies, right? There was somebody who actually did capture, I think, the right attitude, which is blending a discussion of politics and the immediacy of the moment and also getting the message right. And so, again, this is yet another person that said, one of the last conversations I had with Charlie was this, and yet it didn't hit me as ugly. It didn't hit me as so blatantly self-serving. Maybe that's because RFK Jr. is a little bit more talented at that. Maybe it's because he's a little bit more of a sophisticated speaker. And that's probably the case compared to Donald Trump. This, I thought, was one of the better messages, that there are worse things than being killed for what you believe. And it would be living as a slave. I think that's kind of where so many of us are struggling right now, because you look and you go, what other choice do we have? And what's it going to cost us to try to change that?
And we were talking about the risks that all of us take when we challenge intrinsic interest, the physical risk. And he asked me if I was scared of dying. And I said to him, there's a lot worse things than death. And one of those things is if we lost our constitutional rights in this country and that our children were raised as slaves. And I said to Charlie, sometimes the best consolation we can hope for is that we get to die with our boots on. Well, Charlie died with his boots on, and he died to make sure that we didn't have to undergo those fates that are worse than death. Oh, let's remember Charlie. He was for those of us who were friends with Charlie, we don't need any more evidence of the love of God, because the evidence, the friendship, is the best evidence that God loves us all. Thank you, and God bless you.
So he's talking about the fate worse than death, which I think is the thing that many people have forgotten. Yeah, it's awful, but at least the opportunity to stand up and fight where you're at, to hold principles. So what does that challenge look like? And I didn't hear anybody say this, but this is the challenge I think that exists. The challenge is, and I brought this up on InfoWars yesterday for those of you who saw the Sunday piece. The challenge is that if you're going to take this as a moment, if you want to say that I am Charlie Kirk, there's a hashtag that's been running around. A lot of people have been making that something to trend, and they feel really good about it. So they put it on their social media, and they're like, yeah, I'm helping. I'm part of the thing. Okay, fine. I'll take you at your word. I'll give people that in good faith you are saying something that you believe, that it impacted you even if you didn't know the man. I didn't know the man. It deeply impacts me that a father is now gone and the children are going to grow up without him. The only saving grace of that is that Charlie Kirk was videoed hundreds of days a year, and his children will be able to look and see things that he said and be able to judge who he was, not by some encyclopedia definition and not just by mom's memories, but by his own words, which are cataloged. Hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of hours of his own speaking. And they'll get to know who their father was in his own words. That's a small blessing. It really is. The other piece of it then comes down to is like, well, fine, we have access to those things. I keep seeing them pop up in my social media feed. I see them whenever I'm scrolling. If I'm on YouTube, they're going to pop up in shorts. This is a message he had. This is what he had to say. This is how he answered people that thought he was racist, so on and so forth, right? Okay, good. So what did Charlie Kirk do that was so unique, that it made so much an effect that 100,000 plus people turned out and wanted to go to a stadium, that hundreds of thousands of people across this country tuned in, maybe millions of people tuned in to watch that? Why? Because he put something on the line, right? He went out and said things that are very uncomfortable for most people. He did the thing that you would like to do, but maybe you say you can't do because you'll lose your job, because you'll lose a family member, because somebody will cut you off and no longer speak with you. That you're going to be in a scenario where you're going to have what they call no contact, right? No longer will they engage with you. A family member will say, you say this and you're out. If you or have the audacity to have a different opinion, then I'm no longer willing to hear you at all. And that is a pretty leftist idea. People on the right, we have family members we disagree with. We'll still pick up the phone and hear what they have to say. They'll say hateful stuff. We'll, flame out about it, and then we'll go back to it. That's not the case necessarily for people on the left. They have a different culture on it. So are you willing to do that and be a white martyr over it? And that was my discussion that I had with Chase Geiser yesterday. How many people say I am Charlie Kirk and then also know that means you're going to have to say things that you know are true in a polite and a respectful way and stand on 2 feet and see what happens next in your boots. And if that means that you lose a job over it because you're not going to tolerate quiet bigotry or implied bigotry, then that's what it means. And a lot of you guys got a first chance at that and maybe didn't take that move. You tolerated some degree of evil, some degree of lying to your face, and you just ate it. You took it in and you said, okay. And you did so in 2021 and 2022 when mandates came down. And maybe you said, I didn't have a choice. I didn't have a choice. I had to take a shot. I was forced into it. Well, you've had 3 years since then. Have you improved your position to the point where you know what is being asked of you and you're willing to go on and stand on principle? Or are you just going to put a hashtag in your bio and say, I am Charlie Kirk, and not actually live the way that it says? One side is going to make you pay for it. And that, I think, is the legacy that I'm concerned will not endure. That people will just look at it and it's trendy and it feels good and everybody's doing it, so I'm doing it too. But do you really have the courage of your conviction to stand by the thing that you said? We had a number of people that experienced it. You've seen them. I'm one of them, I think. I'm still standing years after all that stuff went down. I told you in our Friday program, it was 3 years to the day that we sold the house. Those were the consequences of saying no, non-negotiable. These are my principles. And I don't intend to cow to anyone. And if that means I don't work here anymore, so be it. A lot of you had that same experience. I've gotten your DMs. I've seen your messages. I know what you guys went through as well, whether it was in a trucking job, whether it was in a factory or some sort of manufacturing facility, because of an OSHA mandate, whether it was because of your healthcare job. A lot of you in healthcare had that same moment. I know people who said, I had a nursing career. I spent years in school. I spent years of perfecting my craft. I got good at what I did. I was highly paid in it. And I said, no, you do not get to make this demand on me. And then you decide what the consequences are, because I've already told you what I'm willing to do, up to and including I don't work here anymore, if need be. And unfortunately, that has to be the same thing in your private life too, it turns out. My family, my wife's family, part of them cut us off. They don't want to talk to us anymore. They can no longer handle the idea that we don't agree with everything they say. And because of that, we cannot be tolerated in their presence. I'm more than willing to have them in my home. I'm more than willing to go to their home and be in a place that is a little bit hostile to my ideology, because I know what I stand for. And it's not hatred. It has never been about hate. It's because I look at some of the ideas that they have and I think this is sort of juvenile and childish. And I think you're better than that. And I want better for you. But even if you don't agree with me, it doesn't mean that I'm not going to love you as a person. It doesn't mean that I'm going to. And that seems to be a very clean break between. I don't see much of a difference between it. So isn't that interesting? Bill Maher talked about the no contact thing. I don't even know if I have this clip queued up correctly, so bear with me a second here. But the concept of cutting people off simply because you don't agree with them and you can't tolerate hearing things that offend your sensibilities, I don't think that is a right-wing phenomenon. And if it is, and you have that, you should fix it. But if you have to endure it, so be it. There's many of us that are in the same boat, and you can commiserate with us as well. Let's give this a listen.
The left does have this bad attitude of go no contact. I mean, that's a big thing with your family. They believe in not talking to members of your family. I mean, at the Emmys, would it have killed someone to get up there, since they all want to talk about their politics, would it kill somebody to get up there, not give a speech about how much they like Charlie Kirk, just to say, we had a political assassination this week, and that's wrong, and we should... They would have been booed off the stage because he was on the wrong team. So you're not even allowed to say that. Can you imagine if a left-wing person was assassinated that week? The whole show would have been about that. Is that not just true? Can't you admit that?
Can we really have dialogue with the left that doesn't want to operate in good faith like that? Can we really move that way? I don't get it. And so I understand why Donald Trump said the thing that he said, this weird tweet, right? This weird post that he made over on True Social. I get it. Justice must be served. They came after me. We've got to do something. I don't know if that's the right answer. And at the same time, something's got to change. So we're in this weird moment where you don't have to tolerate people doing evil things to you, and at the same time, there may be a cleaner way. Here's what he was asked about this particular tweet. And again, it's the reason why I didn't want this to be part of a memorial, because I think it's very different. There are two parts to us. Sometimes there's the public, and then there's the private thing. This seems like this is more of a private statement. So then he got this dragged into public. Here he is talking about it at one of these little press gaggles.
No, I just want people to act. They have to act. And we want to act fast. You know, they were ruthless and vicious. I was impeached twice. I was indicted 5 times. It turned out to be a fake deal. And we have to act fast. One way or the other. One way or the other. They're guilty. They're not guilty. We have to act fast. If they're not guilty, that's fine. If they are guilty, or if they should be charged, they should be charged. And we have to do it now.
Yeah, in some ways he's right. They have to act now. They have to do something. I don't know what that something is. My concern is that something it's run by these types. The same kind of people that had no problem spending every single penny that we had, that had no principles, that we watched a governmental apparatus that just serves itself nonstop and only does. I pulled this stuff off the AI thing today. The question was, how much of our national debt can we attribute to Republican speakers of the House since 9/11? On 9/11, we had $5.8 trillion in national debt. As of September 2025, right now, you can attribute $24.5 trillion of those dollars that we have. There's about $37 trillion in national debt. We have about 24.5 of that is under Republican speakers of the House since 9/11. We are a country that's coming up on 250 years, yes? and $24.5 trillion since in the last 24 years. And then you look at what Nancy Pelosi did. She was the alternative to that. She was the Speaker of the House from 2007 to 2011. She had 4 years there, and then 2019 to 2023. And she's responsible for like 16.78. So just shy of 12. I'm sorry, just shy of $17 trillion in 8 years. I'm just saying that, like, I don't see a huge differential there. We don't have principles that are leading us. So your principles have to be fixed first. Otherwise, you end up pretty much doing whatever is clever, whatever's popular. That's where people go with it. I saw this experiment thing. This may not immediately be obvious to you, but the number of folks that are going to jump in line and say, that's our guy, and cheer things that they probably don't even understand, that's the thing that should be the enemy. Again, if you make your decisions up front and you say, these are my principles, they're inflexible, I'm willing to stand on principle, even if I do it by myself. I'm willing to sit when other people are standing and giving a standing ovation when I don't agree with what's going on. For some reason, this reminds me that most people will not do that. And this is one of those little experiments they did about peer pressure and societal pressure and going along with what's easy because you're looking around and everyone else is doing it. Why wouldn't you?
This video should terrify you. She's part of an experiment, but she doesn't know it. You see, these people are in on it. So every single time they hear a beeping noise, they stand up. It only takes until about the third time before she folds and stands for no reason. Now here's where it gets really crazy. One by one, each one of the people leave the room. And now she's all by herself. And the same beeping noise goes off, and look, she stands. Now they bring somebody new in that was not a participant. Remember, she wasn't a participant. She stands up. At first he ignores her. He asks why. She says everybody was doing it, so she thought she was supposed to. He doesn't quite understand what's going on, but look what he does. He stands. More new people come in, and they all start to stand as well. And remember, all of this started from some fake ass rule that made no sense. And this experiment is exactly why you should think for yourself. This is how bullshit spreads. One person does it, and then everybody else follows without asking any questions. Then it becomes the new normal. This is messed up because this is exactly how families pass down bad habits and how entire cultures can be built on lies. Critical thinking is so important because once you stop thinking, you're no longer living your life. You're just another sheep in the herd.
More accurately, you're just one more person living under operant conditioning, which is to say that I vote for a party and I don't vote for ideas and I don't vote for principles and I don't make them actually live up to it. We saw this stuff during COVID. It continues to be one of those lessons. Maybe this is another opportunity for people to do a do-over on that, where you live principle and not live based on what's been happening around you, that you don't ask any questions. One of the questions I'd like to see asked, because this was something that just happened. This is our last little news story of the day. The House, they passed a funding bill. The Senate said no. Remember, it's not because of principle. It's not because people in the Senate were like, we don't want to spend exactly that much money again, and we don't want to go into further debt. No, they said, you're not spending enough money. That's why Democrats didn't vote for it. So you have this mixed thing where people are not operating based on principle. They're going out on outcomes that they want to get, and the outcome is that we don't care about what comes next. We're willing to saddle our children with debt slavery into eternity, which I believe is what RFK Jr. was talking about. Fate worse than death in many ways. Having your kids live in a slavery where they're working just to pay off the bills of the previous generation before and before that. And you don't see principle here. So we're going to see more voting. We're going to see more movements towards continuing resolutions. And nobody's asking that question. I feel like I'm the only person asking it. I know I'm not, but I feel like I am. The question is, real simply, you have a guy who is the Speaker of the House that he said he was going to do single issue appropriation bills. He's never once done that. Why does nobody care? And the fact that everybody is doing it, that when the beep happens, we all just stand up. When the September comes around, then we all just pass CRs. That's just what we do. Why? Why is that allowed? And why have we spent over $30 trillion in 21 years since 9/11? Why? What do we get for it? Is this country any better than it previously was? I don't think it is. I don't think it's better than it was under when Obama was around. I don't think it's better than it was when Clinton was around. I don't like any of those things. They all make me very, very uncomfortable to look at and to see and go, what the hell actually happened? So I'm going to play one more RFK thing as kind of a palate cleanse right here, which I think is interesting in so much as he reminds me that people didn't used to be this sick. And maybe people have always been disinterested, but maybe they were not so bold and brazen in these areas. We always kind of had a distrust of politicians, and there's plenty of reasons why America's gone off the rails for 120 plus years. But it feels like the slope has gotten steeper and steeper. And I think that our funding and between inflation and the adding of spending and the increasing of the debt limit and all the things that they're doing right now, it does feel like it is hitting a fevered pitch. We talked about the idea that maybe America was running off the edge of a cliff and whether we could do a U-turn. I think maybe Donald Trump has put the brakes on just a little bit or a speed bump, but we're still heading in the exact same direction. And if this funding bill that's going on through the House, it's going to have to go again in the Senate's inability to pass it because they not because it was too fair, because it didn't have enough spending in it. It didn't add more. It didn't add enough of the garbage that they want to do. That should be really concerning and upset you guys. I didn't leave a break in there for the Spotify, so we'll do a Spotify ad real quick. And then you guys, let's remind you while we're doing that, you can join us over on Spotify at KyleSerafinshow.com. You can also watch the program live on X. You can watch it on Rumble. You can watch it on YouTube. I'm seeing our numbers continue to climb over there. Those of you who have joined us over on Locals, I very much appreciate it. You can actually watch the show live on Locals too. Streams there. That's at KyleSerafin.com if you ever want to get away with that. Join the community and be a paid member. Choose to be a free member and interact with us. All good. Always appreciated. You guys have those options. But if you want to find the easiest way to share it with a friend, you can simply go to KyleSerafinshow.com. KyleSerafinshow.com will take you to the hyperlink to Spotify. I keep seeing more and more people joining the Spotify app, and it really is like a superior way to listen because you can go between audio and video. If you guys haven't done that, you can close your screen off and check it out. So check them out. If you're listening right now and you're watching on one of the video platforms live or you're watching on delay, make sure you guys have subscribed, make sure you're liking, and we appreciate all that. It bumps us up in ratings, both on Rumble and on YouTube. It feeds the algorithm. Drop a comment if you guys hate something I said, or if you happen to agree, or if you got a personal story that might be a change on that. And then let's go ahead and do something palate cleansing. Again, I think it's a little bit of a reminder of how far we've fallen in this country over the years. RFK Jr., he's a liberal. He's one of those people we can talk to. He's not a conservative. He believes in things that I don't necessarily think we agree with, but he is reminding us that there was maybe simpler solutions and they may not cost as much money. It's kind of nice to see someone who holds on to those principles, even if we don't agree on everything. This seems like health and the sort of make America healthy again agenda should be something that crosses the boundaries. And people that are resisting him and seeing people on the left fight against him, it lets you know who the liberals and the leftists are in a lot of ways.
There's an entire emerging body of science that links microbiome to mental health, what they call the gut-brain connection. There's these extraordinary studies that have been done in prisons and juvenile detention facilities where they change the foods, and the results are extraordinary. In one juvenile detention facility, and this is pretty typical, the suicide rates went down by 100%. The use of restraints went down by 75%.
When they just changed
when they just changed the diet. There's a professor at Harvard who is curing schizophrenia with dietary changes. And violence went down in prisons by 47%. So one of the things that we're urging governors to do is to look at these areas and to do what they can to start changing the diets in the schools, getting the food dyes out that we know affect behavior. So, there's opportunities now for all of us to live up to our obligation to our children and really give them a chance in life and change not only their physical health, but also their mental health.
Pretty straightforward and simple. We should. And isn't it interesting how much that has changed dramatically, I would say, in my lifetime? Not only am I one of these people that have lived both an analog childhood and a digital adulthood, but I feel like I've also seen a dramatic experience, a change in the way that our country has sort of handled each other and disagreements, and our understanding of civil liberties have changed dramatically. One team has run off the rails and decided they hate it. If you were looking for a big tent, I can get into a big tent with guys that understand that there are problems that I'm going to stay in my lane and try to fix and not get out there. I don't hear RFK Jr. out there, campaigning one way or another about abortion because we probably don't agree on that. It's just interesting to see. I want to find common ground with the people that I can find common ground with where we don't have to actually cede principles. I do think that was kind of the way that Charlie Kirk approached a lot of his discussions. Like to see more of it. So go out there and live that hashtag if you guys are going to have it. Thanks for sharing the program. Thanks for being with us this morning. Look forward to seeing you guys again tomorrow. We've got a lot to cover for the week. We're going to talk about some DOJ weaponization that continues on. I've got stuff about Tom Homan that I wanted to get to, but I'll get to it tomorrow. It'll be good. Stick around. This is going to be an interesting week, and hopefully it's one where we can continue to point out where the progress can be made in a good way. All right. God bless you, and we'll see you again tomorrow.
Thanks for listening to The Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram @Kyle Seraphin.